shield gating is dead. At least it is dead the way we know it so far. And this is big news, with potentially the largest shift in meta the game has seen in years. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you exactly what was announced, how it is going to impact all of us in the future, and what you can do to prepare yourself for the future of Warframe. As always, a big thank you to all my generous channel members who help me keep the lights on. And now, without further ado, let's jump right into it. First of all, what even happened? See, last Thursday, there was a long dev stream where the team behind Warframe briefed us on what is coming to the game in the next couple of months. And while there were certainly a lot of interesting announcements, one of them massively blew not only my mind, but probably also the minds of many other fellow Tenno out there. And that was, shield gating is going to be completely revamped, changed, and overhauled. So this video right here is not going to be your standard dev stream recap. Instead, we're going to go deep into what exactly this means and how it will change the way we play Warframe pretty much forever. I've seen a lot of speculation surrounding this and also misinformation about the topic out there, so let's bring everyone onto the same page. Now, first of all, I want to take again a very brief look at how shield gating is at the moment, just so everybody's on the same page. So, what is shield gating? Shield gating is a mechanic that makes it so that if your shield breaks, you become invincible for a certain period of time before your health can even take damage. This invincibility period is 1.33 seconds, and if your shield fully recharged and then it breaks again, you get another 1.33 seconds of invincibility, and so on and so forth. However, if your shield does not fully recharge after it broke and then breaks again, you only get 0.33 seconds of invincibility, so you're strongly incentivized to always have the shield filled back up completely to get the big amount of time. In order to do this, people would go and equip the Decaying Dragon Key into their inventory. This item makes that your maximum shield capacity is reduced by 75%. And with this strongly reduced maximum shield capacity, it of course would be way easier to fill your shields back up to the maximum amount, and that would then ensure you that you basically always get the 1.33 seconds of invulnerability. Now, the way people would make sure that their shields will always be filled up right away is they would use the Aura mod Brief Respite or the Augur set, which both have the effect that if you spend energy on ability casts, a certain percentage of that energy will be refilled as shields right away. In other words, you would take a hit, your shields would go down to 0, you're invincible for 1.33 seconds, then you cast an ability that fills up your shields again to the max, and then you have the next time when they break another 1.33 seconds of invulnerability, and so on and so forth, which at the end of the day makes you pretty much invincible all the time. Now, this is how shield gating was practiced up till now, and the devs did not really like that because it was not the intended way of how this whole system is supposed to work. So what happened is they announced some big changes to this in the last dev stream, and we're gonna go over these changes right now. Alright, so what changed? First of all, shields in general will be way tankier in the future. If you remember it up until now, then shields were pretty much just paper mache. Whenever you took a serious hit, they basically went down to 0 right away, and only the health could sort of withstand severe damage because there you had the armor, which gave you the damage reduction. Now, in the future, all shields will automatically have a 50% damage mitigation. What that means is, shields in the future will be as tanky as health would be if you have 600 armor. However, health and armor will still be way tankier than shields could ever be. But that was just shields in general. Let's now talk about the changes to shield gating itself. Remember, in the past what we had was 1.33 seconds of shield gating invulnerability if your shields were completely refilled, and 0.33 seconds if your shields were only partially replenished and then broke again. This is going to be overhauled completely. In the future, you're not going to be rewarded for having low maximum shields anymore, because what they're going to do is they are going to make the invulnerability time frame that you get from shield gating depending on how many shields you have. So the more shields you have, the longer you will be invincible after the shield break. They also already gave us some numbers on these, namely that the maximum amount of invincibility time from shield gating will be increased from 1.33 seconds, as it is now, to 2.5 seconds. This is a very long time of shield gating invulnerability. Now, these 2.5 seconds are going to happen if you have a maximum shield of at least 1150. Overshields don't count. In other words, if you have 1150 shields and then they go all the way down to 0 and break, you will be invincible for 2.5 seconds. Everything beyond that will still be 2.5 seconds, but between 0 and 1150, what basically happens is the higher your shields, the longer you will be invincible once they break. For example, the current maximum of 1.33 seconds, which we would get every time when the full shield breaks, is in the future going to be at 325 maximum shields. And the current minimum of 0.33 seconds also in the future is continuing to be the minimum amount of shield gating time, so it cannot be shorter than that. Now, what this means is you are very strongly encouraged to have high maximum shields in order to benefit from a longer shield gating and vulnerability time frame. And on the flip side, that of course also means the Dragon Key variant that we all used to have before is going to be completely and utterly pointless, because now if you're incentivized to have higher shields, having the Dragon Key that reduces your shields by 75% will only hurt you and not benefit you in the slightest. But this is not the only change. Remember what happens when your shields don't fully recharge and then they break again? Like right now and in the past, it was that only if your shields were fully recharged you would get the 1.33 seconds. If they were only partially recharged and then broke again, you would get the 0.33 seconds. And that was regardless of how far they were already charged. For example, if you say you have 1000 maximum shields and only one shield point has been regenerated and then they break again, you get 0.33 seconds. And if you have 999 already regenerated and then they break again, you also would get only 0.33 seconds. This now in the future will also change. From the next update on, partially recharged shields will also have different invincibility times based on how far they have already been recharged before they go back down to 0. The invincibility time that you get here will also be exactly depending on this graph right here. Now, to put this in very, very, very simple words, what it basically means is the amount of time that you are going to be invincible is only depending on the number that your shield bar was showing before it went down to 0. So, what does this all now mean for the future meta of Warframe? See, where before you were clearly incentivized to have the lowest amount possible of maximum shields so you could benefit from shield gating more often, in the future you're going to be incentivized to have higher maximum shields and to have your shields recharge faster to get to higher amounts before they break again in order to ensure that your invincibility time will be as long as possible. And I personally think that's a good idea because it forces us to be more creative with our Warframe builds. However, getting back to over 1000 shields to benefit from the maximum amount of invincibility time is gonna be pretty much impossible with just Brief Respite or the Augur mods the way we did it before, and that is gonna have huge implications on what is gonna be good in the future and what is not. The way it seems to be right now is that every frame who has an ability that can potentially recharge their shields back to full in just one click of a button, all those frames will be extremely more powerful in comparison to how they were before. And the good thing here is, some of these abilities that can recharge shields are also available in the helmet system, so you could potentially use them to put on any frame you want. I'm talking about stuff like Hilgrin's Pillage, for example, even though I'm personally not sure if it's going to be very viable for shield gating, since it's not going to be an insta-shield refill, and you pretty much will need that if shield gating is what you're going for. Or the helmet exclusive ability, Rebuild Shields, which basically does just that, fill your shields up to maximum with one click of a button. Even though this is also kind of problematic because it has a 12-second cooldown, so that's going to be pretty long for shield gating. And after looking into all the skills on the helmet system that have an influence on shields, what it looks like to me is that Harrow's skill, Condemn, where, he sort of chains the enemies down to the ground and gains shield by that, this is something that we will see a lot in the future on many different Warframes when they go into very high-level content, because this seems to be the only cheap and spammable skill that gives you potentially high amounts of shields in just the blink of an eye. So if you find yourself running high-level missions and using shield gating right now, then what you should make sure is that you have your Harrow Condemn subsumed in the helmet system, so you can use that on many of your Warframes in the future. And then, of course, we have frames like Volt or Harrow, who are also going to be very, very strong, even though they were already strong to begin with. But there is one more thing that I want to talk about when it comes to the new shield gating, and that would be arcanes. See, right now there are 2 arcanes available in the game that have an influence on your shield economy, and that will be Arcane Barrier and Arcane Aegis. Arcane Barrier, first of all, looks great on paper. Whenever your shields take damage, you have a set chance that all your shields will be instantly refilled to the max. Now, with the new shield gating meta, this of course sounds great, but there is a problem. First of all, if it triggers, it has a 6-second cooldown. And if you are in a high-level situation, then chances are your shield is gonna break more than only every 6th second. And then on the other hand, the chance of it triggering in the first place is only 6% every time that your shield takes damage. In other words, if your shield goes down very quickly with only 1 or 2 hits, that means that you only have 1 or 2 chances that this arcane will even go on. So I think Arcane Barrier is not going to be viable. And then we have Arcane Aegis, which recharges your shield faster if it switches on, but it also has the same problems as Arcane Barrier, only triggering if your shield takes damage, and if your shield goes down very quickly without taking multiple hits, the chance of it even triggering is not going to be high. So in my opinion, both of these arcanes are not going to be viable. Now, I know that the current shield gating meta is not really popular with the majority of the community. I know there are some high-level players who really love this and who are going to be totally pissed about the changes. Believe me, you will see it in the comments down below. I swear to God, there will be comments saying exactly that. But if you are one of these people who really loves the current shield gating meta and who doesn't want to adapt to the new meta, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. See, what they also announced besides all the changes is there is going to be a new mod added to the game in the next update called Catalyzing Shields. Now, what Catalyzing Shields does is, to put it in very simple terms, it is going to be exactly the same shield gating meta that we have right now. You're gonna get very low maximum shields, and you're gonna get your 1.33 seconds if they break to full, and everything is gonna be like before with the Dragon Key, just that this time you need to make 1 mod slot free to slot in your Catalyzing Shields, and then everything is gonna be like you had it before, and you can play it the way you're used to. Now, this new mod, Catalyzing Shields, will be a corrupted mod, and it will be farmable in the Orokin Derelict on demos just like any other corrupted mods in the game, but once the new update launches, there will also be a one-time alert, which is going to be available for some days, where you can gain access to this mod directly, and you don't have to go through all the tedious corrupted mod grind. Which then only leaves one question open: when are all these changes going to happen? And that is very simple to answer. With the Abyss of Dagoth update on the 18th of October, all these changes will be implemented, along with everything else that has been announced for this update. So, big news for shield gating. Seems like I kinda need to redo my Warframe survival guide now. So, if you don't want to miss that, day 1, you know what to do. Another massive shout out to Akimbo Fate, Nilsby, Lamies, Doganium, Demon Lord Zell, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other, hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, good loot.